Welcome back to Releasing the Meninges. So this is going to be the advanced version of the Meningeal Release that I've developed recently, that I found is more effective and more fast and easier on the patient than the classic work with the atrostem. So don't be shocked that I'm not using the instrument. The atrostem is a great instrument and it's good for many things, but I strongly believe that it's not best for everything. There are things that are really better done by hand, and the Meningeal Release is one of those things that is much easier and better done by hand. The checks are going to be the same like in the prior video. I'm going to show it again, but it's going to be the same thing. But we're going to add two things. First, the release is done a little different. And the other thing is we will combine the different movements of the meninges. I just checked Steph and we found that she has some tension, so we can show you how this is going to work. First of all, we're going to check again the 6 different directions where the meninges can be under stress. The first one, anterior meninges. Please flex the head forward the full way and then straight. And I do get a drop here, so she has tension in the anterior meninges. The next thing is extend the head backwards, all the way and straight. I don't get a drop here, there's no tension there. Okay, now rotate the head right, all the way and back. Nothing here. Rotate the head left, all the way. And I get a drop here, so we have anterior meninges and we got torque to the left. Now this ear to this shoulder and straight. And we get a drop here. And this ear to this shoulder and straight, and no drop here. So we basically got 3 different directions now. The anterior one, we got torque to the left, and we got side bending to the right. So we could just release them one by one, like in the classic technique, but what I found is more effective is to just kind of stack them on each other and use a combination, because that's actually the pattern that is happening here. She got tension in the anterior, then there's torque, and then there's side bending. So we can combine that. In her case, this would be flexion, side bending, and rotation. So the head position that we would use would be like this. Another example, if somebody had flexion, rotation to the right, and side bending to the right, it would look like this. Flex 70% forward, side bend to the right, rotate to the right. This would be the position of release. If somebody had extension and side bending to the left, it will look like this. So we will combine the different parts where the meninges are under stress, and we get a much better 3-dimensional model of the meningeal tension, and we can release it easily. The release is pretty similar to what we have done with the atrostem, but it's more effective this way because we're dealing with soft tissue. The release point, again, will be the falum terminale, first and about second segment of the coccyx. So this is where we're going to do the release. But what we will do, we will use 4 fingers of our hand, go down, put pressure on, not hard pressure, but the pressure should be enough that we don't slip and that we can take the tissue and put it to tension. And then we're going to stretch the tissue up and hold for about 5 seconds while the patient is in the position of stress. And that release the release is really very powerful, much easier and much faster. And we can just do it with one technique. We just stack it, 5 seconds, and that's it. We first have the patient move in the position, then we apply the stretch and hold it for 5 seconds. While we still hold, the patient releases the position, and then we release our hand. That's important that you do it this way. So with Steph, we found out it's flexion, rotation to the left, and side bending to the right. The axis point, again, find the junction of the sacrum to the coccyx. Use 4 fingers of your hand, put them there. You can stabilize the patient a little in front, and then just push in a little and pull up that you feel they're stretching the tissue up, and hold for 5 seconds while the patient is in the position. So it's going to look like this. First, flex the head forward all the way. Then move back just a little bit. All right. Now it's going to be side bending to the right and rotation. Please hold the position right here. I'm going to take the tissue, pull up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's a little pulsation here in the moment. And now move the head back, relax and easy to a neutral position. She moves back, now I release. So that's the technique. You put the patient in the position, it could have been just flexion, just whatever you find. You take your contact at the filum terminale, push in so you have the tissue, you pull the tissue up, you pull the filum terminale up, relaxing the meningeal tissues while they are under stress. You hold for 5 seconds, the patient moves the head back in the neutral position, then you release. For people who are not familiar with the occipital drop and KST, but are familiar with muscle testing, you could find out what part of the meninges is under tension by muscle testing also. You would just have the patient stand there, use a muscle, and do the same thing. Just flex the head forward, and you would just test the muscle. And if it gets weak, you have tension. Back up, all the way back, and you would say hold, and you would just test it. So you don't necessarily need to be familiar with the occipital drop. It's very easy and very powerful to use it, but if you just know muscle testing, you could use the same technique. So we have two new things. We can stack, we can make a combination of the different stress positions of the meninges, and the release is 4 fingers between the sacrum and the coccyx. Push in a little, pull up, you feel the tissue under tension. With her, there was a nice pulsation while the tissue was releasing. Hold for 5 seconds, patient moves the head back in the neutral position, and you got the release accomplished. Again, do this at the end of the treatment. And we will be back with video 3 in just a second, demonstrating the brainstem release. That is a very powerful combination. Bye.